Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 6th, 2022 Facilities Advisory Committee meeting. I am Chairperson of the Facilities Advisory Committee, Brian Gebhardt. I call our meeting to order at 7:36. We'll begin with the roll call. Please get yourself off mute and say yay if you are present. So with I am present, marking myself as present. Cecily Lee.
Yes, here.
Kenyana Pinzon is not present. Henry Fung.
Here.
Tom Ekman.
Here.
Mary Vigil. Mary?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Also serves as a check to make sure we can hear you. Michelle Hartman-Gruber.
Here.
Sharon Coco.
Here.
William Rochek, not present. Robert Ho, not present. Jennifer Parker.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm here.
And Jennifer Iochi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Also want to recognize we have Trustee Diane Jones and Trustee Zhang here this evening.
Yep. Hi.
Hello. Welcome. And then Kelly, if you would like to introduce staff and
I actually am my
please.
only staff person from facilities that's in attendance. We do also have Thomas Ekman, but I believe he's representing one of the union bargaining units, but he is from our M&O division as well.
Right. Then we have Karina, if would mind introducing yourself.
We do have our legal counsel here with us, Karina San Maniego, and she is a guest tonight to share with us some of the information that we are going to be presenting to the board and explain to us what the reasoning behind the resolution is that we're bringing forward.
Thank you. And then also wanted to recognize Bobby Perry is here from the public. She is an interested community member and has also submitted an application to join the FAC. So glad you could make it this evening. And
thank you. Thank you very much.
so I kind of skipped ahead to introductions. I should have done adopt the agenda first, but we'll go back to that. And is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion, Jennifer Parker.
Thank you, Jennifer Parker. Is the second?
I will second it, Mary Vigil.
We have a motion and a second. Please. Oh, Henry, you have raised your hand. You have a
Yeah, I have
question?
I have a question. So I just want to make sure, is our meeting an hour and a half long or 2 hours long? Because if I add up all the minutes, it looks like the items would add up to 2 hours worth. And it was 2 hours, and it's never going to be 2 hours, going to be longer than that. So I just want to make sure, is our meeting usually an hour and a half or 2 hours?
Thank you for asking that question. I'm trying to remember. I think typically we are about 2 hours. I think this time it added up to an hour and a half, but you're right, from a posting standpoint, I should make sure we're consistent on the length of the meeting.
Okay, so yeah, if right now all the items add up 2 hours, so if the meeting time will change to 9:30, then if that's the case. But also, yeah, also if people will kind of want to know, like, so that way people know how long the meeting's going to be.
Thank you, Henry, for checking my work there. I didn't realize it added up to 2 hours. So, um, so, but we'll try to move through it quicker than that. So, everyone in Michelle, do you have a comment on the agenda?
Yeah, well, it's really the timing. I mean, when I started on this committee. It was an hour and a half. Was supposed to have a 9 o'clock cutoff. It's a later meeting than some of the other meetings. We looked to try and change the time. The time didn't change. And when you keep adding things on, you guys have a second meeting. Some of these people have a second meeting that actually starts before this. When we keep dragging it out, it just, it loses it. And from an SEIU, we're the people that are in there early to open up the schools and everything. It's hard on having a really drug out meeting. So if we can keep to the 1.5 hours, that would be good.
Thank you, Michelle, for reminding me that. We will work towards that. Yeah, we can always talk about that as we talk about future meeting topics as well, from a scheduling standpoint, if we think we need more time for something or not. So for this meeting, I will try to get us done by 9 o'clock. All in favor, please raise your virtual hand. Please lower your virtual hand. Any opposed, please raise your virtual hand. All right, seeing none, carries unanimously. Next, we'll move on to approval of minutes. The minutes are Exhibit A and were provided before the meeting. Please entertain a motion to approve the minutes or questions about the minutes at this time.
I'll motion to approve the minutes. Cecily Lee.
Is there a second?
This is Sharon. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion. All in favor, please raise your virtual hand.
Brian, you're still muted.
Please lower your virtual hand. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your virtual hand. See, motion carries unanimously. We'll move next item is oral and written communications. Did we have any written communications, Kelly, that you're aware of?
I have not received any that I'm aware of.
Thank you. And do we have any oral communications from anyone on the meeting tonight? Please raise your virtual hand if you have something for oral communications. All right. Seeing none, we will move on to item 5. Share FAC Chair communication of the Board of Education regarding staff facilities recommendations. Here, I just wanted to close the loop with the committee, and it was provided as Exhibit B, the precise letter that I shared with the board and staff regarding our decision last meeting. I think if there are any questions or comments on what was provided, now would be the time to bring that up. As it's a decision we already made, we don't need any more discussion than that, though. So, but I wanted to make sure everybody had seen that the communication had gone out. Jennifer Parker.
Yeah, I just had a question. Will we as a committee find out later what eventually happened with that information? I mean, obviously I could attend the board meeting, but I was just wondering, would we get anything back as a committee?
Excellent question. I'm moving so fast I forgot. Yeah, I know that the item has not come up before the board on the facilities recommendations. Kelly, I don't know if you have any further information regarding when we might.
I actually am going to have a discussion with the superintendents tomorrow to make that determination of when they're going to be moving that information forward. Because we have worked on quite a bit of documentation and presentation to the board, but it's always left up to them to decide what actually gets moved forward at what time. So I may have more information with you for you tomorrow after I have a conversation with them.
Thank you, Kelly. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, we will move to item 6, review waiver request to the State Board of Education for disposition of surplus property. Kelly, if you can introduce and cover this item.
And I am going to turn it over. Karina is here to share with us and explain exactly that process is that we're going through. And just as a sort of precursor, a lot of you guys were participants on the 7-11 committee that we met.
Unfortunately, Kelly, you're breaking up.
What? Great, Karina.
Got it. Thank you everyone for having me tonight. So I'll give you a quick background. Since your committee, you review the properties for the district, I think you understand very well the importance of public input into the disposition or the usage of public property. So specifically with respect to the former Marshall School site, we did go through a 7-11 committee process, and this was during the year 2021. And at that time, that 7-11 Facilities Advisory Committee prepared a report, did a proper evaluation, and presented to the board and recommended determining the Marshall School site to be surplus to the district's educational needs. At that time, the board did make that determination and make that finding. Some time has passed, and I think staff has been looking into options into how to dispose of the property and timeline. Recently, on the March 23rd, 2022 meeting, the board authorized staff to proceed with disposition of the Marshall School site. And along with that, of course, comes all these statutory requirements in order to go through that process. One of the main ones is to go through a priority offering process, which we have already commenced at the board's direction. So we did give our notice to the local planning agencies and some of the other housing agencies that this property is being available for sale or lease. A second piece to that is the public property has to go through a public bid process. And this bid process is an auction process that requires the board to take the highest purchase price submitted to the board. And so, as you can imagine, the problem with that process for many school districts is taking the highest price is not necessarily in the best interest of the district. And specifically for this Marshall site, and it's surrounded by city parks, it's in a neighborhood. The board wanted to make sure that they had the flexibility to negotiate with other developers for the site. So with that being said, there is a process in the education code where we can seek waivers of certain bid procedures for the surplus disposition process. And that is what the board has asked or directed us to do. And so we will be going through that process. One of the requirements before we submit the application to the State Board of Education to allow the district to bypass the auction process is having the relevant advisory committee weigh in on this waiver and to provide any comments and objections. And we are required by law to insert objections of the advisory committee into our application to the State Board of Education. So specifically, I can tell you we are seeking waivers of all things related to the auction. So we are working with the broker to prepare a request for proposals, and the proposals will allow us to look at all options, both for sale, lease, and lease with option to purchase. And also we can set boundaries on what kind of development could happen there and what kind of buyer will be able to purchase the land from us. Whereas if we stuck with the statutory process, we may not have that flexibility. So there are several statutes from which we'll be seeking a waiver from the State Board of Education. And currently we are targeting a July 13 meeting for the State Board to consider Fremont Unified's request. What is coming up next is for the April 13th board meeting. Also by statute, it is required that the board conduct a public hearing. And so the advisory committee has to weigh in on the waiver process before the public hearing. And that is why this was agendized for today.
Thank you, Karina.
If I understood correctly, the waiver process gives us a lot more flexibility. Is there any reason why one might want the statutory process instead? Are there any advantages of the statutory process or not? Was this one of my first questions?
Is that a question for me, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it depends on the type of property we're dealing with. I think, for example, if it was a closed school, closed schools, the property, the playground, and the facilities itself, sometimes it is difficult to get a developer to come and negotiate with us. Whereas if we go through a formal bid process for that kind of site, so long as we can get the highest price for that kind of property, maybe it is beneficial to the district. I think for the Marshall site, the city is very interested in it. It's in a neighborhood where kids go to that area. I think it's public knowledge that, we were going to place a school there and we decided not to for safety reasons. And so in that kind of situation, waiving the bid process will allow staff to negotiate and kind of set parameters around what kind of developer could potentially end up there.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion items from the committee?
I guess, and maybe this will come out later, but are there specific things the district is hoping to attract from a developer that they're looking for that the waiver process allows more specifically? I mean, I guess I can see that you have more flexibility, but what is the district looking for that they need that flexibility to do? Is that?
Well, I can give you an example. I can give you an example. Okay. I can give you an example, and this is just not for this district, but many districts. I think charter schools, some of the bigger ones, they are always looking for school sites. And so not necessarily that we don't want a charter school there, but let's say, for example, if we do not want a charter school to purchase our property and they are the highest bidder under the statutory process, we would have to sell it to the. Whereas in this situation, let's say we may not want the charter school there, or maybe we don't want a daycare program there. And so we are able to be particular and, specify who we want the property to go to.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle.
Yeah, just a curiosity. Would in setting up something, if it was a developer that wanted to put housing in, could it be as bold to say the housing should be for 55 plus people or something like that, so that it doesn't impact? If you had housing that impacted the school district with more students that we could not accommodate in that area, that then became a issue of whether or not how are we going to get kids to schools, overloading, and all that type of stuff. Could that be actually a parameter that could be set up in negotiation of the sale of the property for the attorney?
Yes, sorry, I'm just thinking through this. Potentially, sometimes when we are looking at entitlements for projects, we may have to involve the city. And I think we went through this with the 7-Eleven committee and how far we should limit the type of development to go on that property. I think another problem is even if we sold it to a developer for a senior citizen housing project, the problem is it can always be resold to another developer, and maybe they have other purposes for that property. So it is hard to really focus the type of project in the end that may end up there. But, it doesn't always kind of put it out there during the public hearing and, during our meetings in open session, what our vision is.
Any other questions?
I have one, Brian. Karina, when we were meeting with the 7-Eleven committee, was there any discussion, or I recall discussion that we could actually, if we didn't go with the statutory process, we could go directly to negotiations with specific buyers? Is that still something that is available once we make the decision for disposition?
Yes, that's correct. So once the State Board of Education approves our waiver request, then all of the formal bid auction process is taken out of our requirements to dispose of the property. So we can either negotiate directly or we can go through the RFP process that we are working through separately as well. And, as always, the district has the option to hold on to the property and put it back into use.
Now, is there a certain amount of time that we can hang on to it without being charged any penalties or fees?
Yes. I'm not sure when the rolling, 6 years is, but there's a time frame from when, if we do go through this disposition process and we don't get any viable offers, then we have an extra year, or we can, there are other ways to waive that, quote unquote penalty fee. But I think at this point, because we've been holding on to Marshall for so long, it is in the district's best interest to figure out a way to either waive the fees by putting it into some sort of use, whether it's an indirect administrative use or leasing it to a childcare program or something else like that, or to just sell it.
Jennifer Parker.
I just had a quick question, and because I'm not aware, would I be able to, what was it about it that they didn't like the school? Like what made it unsafe to use? I was just curious.
I will defer to you, Karina, on that one.
Yes, I'm thinking. I think what was made public is that there is a high pressure gas line that crosses actually the city side of the property. And for school sites, the CDE, California Department of Education, they like to locate schools outside of a 1,500 feet kind of cushion outside of high pressure gas lines. So I will stop there. That was what was made public.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, let's say the state approved the waiver, and where usually we advertise the property. Is that, usually when you buy commercial, you put a star, what do you call that? LoopNet or something, but for school district, where do you put it to the public? And usually how long it takes? I know commercial takes a long time. But for school district kind of a property, it could be take even longer.
No, correct. So that's a good question. So the initial offer process, we did release a notice to all the public agencies, including the University of California, all those colleges, as well as the county, the city. And so at every level, at least the public agencies know. So if anyone in their community is looking for a site like this, then at least they are aware. For purposes of the RFP, for example, the broker, typically what they do is they have their own contacts. So it will be local developers just talking to each other, as well as, I don't want to say unfortunate, well, the school communities will talk to each other as well. So you're absolutely right. It is difficult to get their attention because it is a school site surrounded by a city park. But the brokers are pretty good about talking to each other, saying, hey, there is a site available. And, school sites are desirable because they are just good, clean sites.
So we will hire a broker to sell our property, right?
My understanding is we are working with Mr. Dutra right now on kind of setting that up. So, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Which Dutra, if you happen to know?
Yes, this one is the Dominic. Yes.
The Dutra family in Fremont has been very, very helpful to Fremont and to Fremont schools.
No, absolutely. So yeah, Dominic is the specific Dutra for this purpose.
I thought I heard that. That's true. Because I think, and please, Karina, correct me if I get any of this wrong, but the district was able to take advantage. It's a slightly different situation, but the district was able to acquire the Fremont Boulevard horse property from another public agency. So, and so that's so it could be very advantageous to another agency and create a win-win. But anyway, if there are no further questions, I did want to ask Karina to clarify the specific action we need to take to make sure we complete that action.
No, of course. So the statute only requires that you are reviewing this waiver, and we did have a discussion on it, and that I would like to make sure that there are no objections to submitting this waiver request to the State Board of Education. If there are any objections, then I would ask them to be in writing.
Okay. So I would be looking for a motion to that effect, right? To move that FAC has no objections to the waiver request. And then we'll vote on that to make it explicit. So if there's a committee member who is ready to make a motion of that kind, please do so now. Jennifer Aoshi.
So to summarize what I think I heard, the waivers would allow us or allow the school district to decide who they want to sell to. And the example that was provided made that very clear, that if a charter school would want to build or rebuild or use the existing area, the district can say no. However, the district could also decide to sell to a developer who wants to build more housing and impact our schools potentially even more. Does that
No, that is correct. It's just the whole range of however you want to sell it to whoever you want to sell it, or hold on to it.
And holding on to it costs some penalty at this point, since we're not using it.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Oops, sorry.
Is there an emotion?
I'll make a motion. How should I word it?
I would suggest wording it as the FAC has no objections to submitting the waiver request for the Marshall site.
Yeah, my motion would be that the Facility Advisory Committee has no objection to submitting the waiver for the Marshall site.
Is there a second?
I'll second Tom Ekman.
Thank you, Tom. All right. With your virtual hand, please, if you are in support of the motion, please raise your virtual hand now. I have 7 in support. Please lower your virtual hand. If you are not in favor of the motion, please raise your virtual hand now. All right. I have nobody not in support of the motion, so the motion carries. Yeah, so no objections.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Karina.
Good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That brings us to our next item, which is to review the FUSD facilities program. And I will turn it over to you, Kelly, to kind of share the scope of what you would like to review this evening.
There's so much information. Just give me a second while I'm going to share with you guys the presentation that we shared with the, excuse me, the CBOC committee this evening. And it's a very nice visual presentation where you guys can see actual progress from a lot of the sites. And so if you give me just a moment, I had it queued up, but it just got away from me. Let's see.
While you're pulling that up, I will refresh everybody's memory about the intent here. Including my own, candidly. It's been a long week. But this came out of our conversation about the facilities priorities item from last time, where we wanted to do a facilities program review, kind of a complete program review of all in-progress projects, their current risks, funding sources being used for each project, and then also, when available, review the revised roofing estimates. That's the complete scope. In discussing with Kelly, to try and keep things to a reasonable both workload and length of meeting, we aren't expecting to cover all of that now here tonight, but she's going to share some of it, and then based on questions and feedback, we will decide what additional information to bring back in a future meeting.
Okay, so let's get that together. All right, let's see. Okay. Let's cancel. Sorry about that. I also am still getting used to Google and all of the different nuances from Zoom. So can everyone see my screen? It's not okay. So this was a report that was presented to the CBOC this evening, and I'm going to see if I can make it a little bit bigger because it's kind of small. Let me know if you guys can see it clearly. See if I can move this around a bit. I'll take it down a little bit. How's that? Try it at 90. All right. Well, here you have, what you have here is the monthly report that is submitted to the CBOC that basically gives them a current snapshot of what is actually going on all of the different projects. Excuse me. Here, all of the projects are broken down into design here, and then also you have projects that are now under construction, and then also a listing of projects that are closed out. So going back up to our first slide, these are the current projects that are currently in design review or in DSA for approval based on the design review they have already completed. So with Thornton Middle School conversion, we are on our 3rd increment and getting ready to prepare to bid our 4th increment, I believe, this month. The goal is to have increments 3 and 4 completed and returned from DSA, and have them bid and awarded before our summertime schedule begins. And we try and do this because, of course, summertime is the busiest time for schools construction, but it's also ample time because, the school sites are vacated. So with Thornton, you can see with the columns, you see project status update, project budget, and then school beneficial use. And as you can see, Thornton is scheduled to have beneficial use by next summer in preparation for the fall 2023 school year. So right now we're on target to do that, and things are moving along very well. The next project listed is the Centerville Middle School conversion, Phase 3, Increment 2, and then their locker room modernization and portable locker room conversion. That also is moving along, and as you all recall, we did bring the award for the Increment 3 to the board, I believe in January, for approval. And now we have finished our negotiations and have started ordering and kind of lining the general contractor up for him to begin his work. I believe they're scheduled to mobilize additional vendors on site the first week of June. So that project is also moving along. Excuse me, and that is scheduled for a fall 2023 beneficial occupancy for the locker room. And then the remainder of the administrative buildings and different portables should be ready by the end of fall of 2023. Looking at December 21st would be our finish date for that. So that for 2024 they would be fully occupied in that particular site. The next one that's listed is.
We have a question. Is a question?
Sure.
Janayoshi? And thank you. If you raise your hands, if you have a question, that does help.
Yep. I just had a question about some of the terminology that's being used. You used the acronym GMP. What does that mean?
Guaranteed maximum price.
And what does that actually mean?
That means that the contractor has provided an estimate to us and has guaranteed that his price will not exceed the price that he has provided us for the scope of work that we've determined that we want him to do. So it's kind of like if you hire somebody to do your backyard, they're going to say, hey, what's your budget? And of course, you don't want to give them your budget. You want them to give you an estimate of what it's going to cost you for the work that you want to do. And so in essence, that's what the contractors have done for us. We provided them with documents and a clear scope of work to say, we want you to complete X, Y, and Z. And they said, okay, with some of these unknowns identified, we're going to go ahead and give our best guesstimate to say our maximum price will not exceed this particular number. And so usually within that guaranteed maximum price, we have things called allowances, contingencies, and allotments. Mm-hmm. And those are for items that are probably not clearly defined, because if you have to rip down a wall and you don't know what's behind there, you have to account for worst case scenario. Or if we know that there's an item that is not readily available, or we're planning or we expect a cost increase, we expect them to also look at what that escalation is going to be on that item and include that in their bid. So that's what a guaranteed maximum price is.
Great. Thank you for explaining that to me. And then are a majority of our bids, do they tend to be the GMP, or are they generally a minority?
No, so the GMPs are usually used, and what we call is project delivery methods are the instruments by which contracts are kind of structured. And so a GMP is usually used in a lease-leaseback situation. And a lease-leaseback is a contractual term where we, in essence, lease the property to the developer, i.e. the contractor, and the contractor has an architectural team and it does, other engineers and things that work with him to say, okay, we want to, Fremont Unified, we want to build this project for you, but we're going to enter into a lease agreement with you where the exact cost of the time that it's going to cost, the exact time and the exact price of what it's going to cost to build the building is going to be the terms of our lease agreement. So as we go through the process of building this building, we have scheduled, just like you have a lease payment that you're leasing on a building, you have scheduled lease payments that have been broken out in increments to say, we're going to pay you X, Y, Z dollars over this period of time to complete this project. And at the end of the project, they then turn that property back over to the district, and we then, in essence, own it. And that is used when you either have very limited bidders in the bidding environment, or you have very specific contractors with specific skills that you're looking for to work on your project. So for these larger projects, we use the lease-leaseback method because at the time that these projects were being developed and executed, the construction marketplace, we were not getting a huge response from builders to actually do this. But once we did change to a lease-leaseback, we were able to get some of the larger, very qualified and very reputable companies to then come and participate in the construction program. So the other three forms of contracts are design build, and that's where you design it and you build it, and you actually start building it before you're finished with your designs. They usually start engaging the contractor and build beginning around 60-70% of design, and they finish the rest of the design while they're actually under construction. The traditional method is design bid build, which is where all the designs are completed first. It's actually then put out to bid in a public marketplace. And of course, all of these bids are all in a public marketplace. And then you bid it and then you build it. Those are the traditional. And the other one is called turnkey or fast track. And that's where you have a combination of custom design work that is actually integrated with, say, a modular prefabricated facility that you can choose to, hey, I like that building over there, but I don't like these particular nuances of it. Will you then go and kind of make your own design with that sort of made structure to kind of personalize it based on what your needs are? And so those are the four major types of contracts and processes that school districts go through for their projects. And I'm sure you guys are like, that's too much information, but I just wanted you guys to fully understand,
that was,
all the differences.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So moving on to, are there any other questions before I move on? Unfortunately, I can't see you guys, but just somebody give me a yes or no.
I'll let you know if questions come up, Kelly.
Okay,
and
thanks,
please
Brent.
raise your virtual hand if you have a question.
Okay. So the next one we have that's still under, let's see, that's still in design. So it's Thornton, Centerville. Okay, those actually are our only ones. And I apologize. So Kennedy High School and our Group 1 elementaries are also in design right now. So there will be a presentation next week that will be presented to the board to go over the full scopes of work for the elementary schools. And so our Kennedy High School modernization is here. This is our overall budget, which includes all of our construction costs and soft costs. And we actually need to update this schedule because we are actually running around 9 to 10 months behind schedule based on DSA and their delayed reviews. So we're going to probably update this by the end of this week once we get confirmation back as to when we're actually going to get our comments back. We are having a page turn review this Friday, but that's also contingent upon our California Department of Education and our Department of, Department of, oh my gosh, Division of the State Architect review that the documents are currently in right now. The next item on the list is the Brookvale Elementary. Brookvale is also the elementary school that is part of the Group 1 that was approved as a Group 1 project, I believe, in 2018. And now we are in 2022, and we are now starting to move forward on getting those elementary schools started. The modernization includes basic service upgrades for electrical, water service, HVAC systems will be looked at, modified, and replaced as needed. Roofing is also included. It does not include re-roofing, but it includes the roofing penetrations required for the HVAC work that's being done. There are several areas that do have to be replaced, but we're in the process of doing roof studies right now to actually determine the extent of, if there is damage, to what extent that damage is actually present at all of the school sites. Flooring, and then also minor restroom upgrades that will occur. Their budget is about $6.679 million. And, oh, excuse me, they have been working diligently to develop those documents and get those prepared for the DSA submission that we have later this month. The next one is Green Elementary, and they also are going to have very similar scopes of work as Brookvale has had. With electrical, they're actually going to have some sewer service work done because I believe that they have a lot of backups and a lot of problems right now. Their HVAC systems are going to be evaluated, renovated, and replaced as needed. They actually will have a full overhaul and upgrade to their fire alarm and fire alarm sensor system, and then some paving and some flooring throughout. Also, sort of rounds out their scope of work. Their budget is a little bit smaller, $5,208,450. And then the next one is the Matos Elementary School modernization. Cookie cutter scope of work as in green, and their budget is actually a little bit smaller at $4,320,423. And as I stated, these fall 2023 schedules are probably going to be shifted based on whatever information we get back from DSA at the end of this week. And then, of course, we will bring this information to the board and have a discussion as to what some of the remedies or solutions would be for us moving forward if the schedule, for some reason, cannot be maintained. The next one is Mission San Jose Elementary.
We have a question,
Yes.
Jen Parker.
Just a quick question. That date, is that like a start date, or was that I know they're going to change, but is that the beginning or the end?
No, that was supposed to be the substantial completion.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Because we were supposed to we actually should have started last fall, but we didn't because we were delayed in DSA accepting applications and actually doing their initial reviews. And so because of that, whatever time you lose on the front end gets added on the back end. And so that's where we're in the process of determining how we can recover on our schedules and still maintain the fall 2023. But in the event that we can't, if it won't support programming and school safety, then we're going to, of course, adjust it so that it would be much more appropriate for, continued use of the school site.
Would some of that work have already, has some of that already started, and or is it none of whatever's listed under the, the modernization has some aspect of that already started?
No, actually none of this work that we're talking about right now has been started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. These are all brand spanking new, fresh out of the box, new projects.
What are the major stages in projects that we track? I think just so everybody is aware. This is the design stage, but what are the other stages after design?
Okay. There are actually 5 stages. So we have schematic design, or what we call project development. That's where we come up with, hey, this is what I need to do at this school. And you write down everything that needs to be done, and you try and then compartmentalize it and group it together to say, this is this scope of work, or this is this scope of work. And then that schematic design then turns into or moves into the design development phase. And the design development phase is where you've taken all the concepts or ideas that were generated in schematic, and now you actually formalize them and actually put a framework around them to say, this is what our scope of work is going to be. The next phase after that, you move from design development to construction documentation. And construction documentation is where all of the work that was approved in design development to say, yes, this is exactly what we want. Now it's formalized into actual construction documents that you can actually give to a contractor, and they then price and actually bid on it. The next phase after the documentation is, of course, bidding. And bidding usually lasts anywhere from really small projects of 2 weeks up to 60 days based on the size of the job. So for these projects, we're probably going to advertise for about 45 days. And by the end of the 60th day, we want to be able to have the bids received and then taken to the board for approval so that we can then begin. Once the bids are received, then you have construction. And construction is where all of the, the great stuff happens, that everything comes out of the ground and all the new refreshing occurs. And then the tail end of construction is what we call closeout. And that's where everything that is a loose end or something that's an afterthought is picked up and actually completed. And we call that punch list period, where if you see that the paint on a certain wall is not correct, it gets done over and fixed. Or if you see there's crown molding that's not lined up correctly, that gets fixed. Or if your electrical panels or your fire alarms are not all firing off at the same time as they're being tested, those kinds of things get fixed before the beneficial occupancy is actually provided. And beneficial occupancy is where the school district basically takes ownership of the property, but we're not 100% occupying the site. And when we have full occupancy is when we've totally moved all of, the teachers, the students, and the building is ready to, have an opening day and everybody kind of walks in. So those are, actually, I guess it's 6 phases, but it's really just 5 solid phases that the process that we go through in getting these projects done.
And which phase includes the Department of State Architect or DSA approval?
That would be our design development phase, in which we are in right now. And as you guys can see, we're in design development right now for all of our elementary schools. And we're in what we call DSA back check, which is still part of design development, but we have already submitted the information for Kennedy High School back in December. And so now we're waiting on DSA to basically check our information and provide a back check comment list for us to say, hey, we want you to add X, Y, and Z, or we want you to delete X, Y, and Z, or we've, in our instance, they're changing so many things. Oh, we've changed and now we're requiring you to do X, Y, and Z. And so that's what's happening with Kennedy right now. But all of that occurs within your design development phase.
So let's continue through the rest of the projects. I think we're going to get into past design projects that are past design on the next page.
Okay. Let's go here. So here's our last 2 elementary schools. Well, last elementary school. And this is what we call our IT scope gap projects. And these are basically just the rest of the IT and network upgrades for the remaining schools that were not addressed in the first IT upgrade program. And so those are going to be starting, I believe, this summer. And there's a really long list, but we didn't, put it here. But if you all want to know what the list of sites those are, we will provide that documentation for you guys. Vallejo Mill is also one of the elementary schools. Once again, cookie cutter scope of work similar to the others. Excuse me. Their budget is $6,583,042. And as I said, this fall 2023 date potentially will change, but we'll know more by the end of this week. So moving on to the projects that are under construction. So here is our Hopkins Middle School, and you're receiving 2 new story classroom buildings. There's a new multi-purpose room. There's a new music classroom building. They're modernizing all of the administrative spaces and also a lot of the classrooms. And they're also getting a new kitchen facility as well as some additional bathrooms. And that was just not listed here. This is just generally the kinds of things that have been going on. Here is the overall budget for the project that was board approved. And we are anticipating having full occupancy by summer of next year. And as you guys know, the Hopkins currently is residing at the Lila Bringhurst site. And we're getting mixed messages from some of the families to say, well, we don't want to leave, but the others are like, hey, we want to get back to our school. So we're excited to have them be able to come back to their home school and be able to enjoy some of the wonderful upgrades that are occurring right now. Excuse me. Next is our Thornton Middle School project. And I'm sure you guys, if you drive along Thornton Boulevard, you can see the the 5 new classroom buildings that are up in the back. And of course, if you have a young student who's a baseball player or soccer player, you've had an opportunity to also enjoy the play fields that were completed last summer. And so we are currently moving into our final increment, which will allow us to complete the modernization of the existing buildings that are currently not under construction, and also the administrative spaces, and also build a new bus turnaround and access. And we are working with the city to install also a new traffic light at another location along Thornton Avenue, and putting additional stop signs on the adjacent streets and putting additional crosswalks in. That budget currently is at $92,473,823, and they are also on schedule to be ready for full occupancy in summer of 2023. Next up is Centerville, and I'm sure if you drive along Fremont Boulevard, you see Centerville, and that wonderful new 2-story structure is up, and the windows are in, and it's starting to take shape. We have an additional new locker room that's going to be under construction also. And their play fields will begin construction, I believe, the last week of May, the first week of June, as for full renovation and an upgrade. And that project budget currently is at $90,233,148. And they are on track also to finish summer of 2023. So it'll be wonderful because all of the remaining middle schools will be converting all at the same time. So it'll be exciting for your middle schoolers to be able to enjoy their campuses and see the fruits of all of our labors. So
Robert has a question.
Sure.
So Thorn and Centerville are mentioned here, and they're also mentioned early in the design phase. So does that mean that there's more charges coming?
No.
Beyond the 92 and 90 here?
No, the budgets that you see here are the overall construction budgets for the entire program.
But if you're in this, okay, so you've already allocated, you've estimated what those design projects will cost?
Correct. So because these are guaranteed max price contracts, the builder, when they bid the project, we identified the various increments in the scope of work that would be done. And so they based their budgets on that scope of work that was identified for each one of the increments. So as these are being bid, as long as the bids fall within the budgets that we have allocated for that increment, the overall budget does not change.
Can you scroll up to the page to show the other Centerville Thornton item?
Sure.
Briefly. I was just trying to remember.
Yeah, see, it's included below.
But if you're putting things out to bid, are you putting them out to bid to the same contractor that gave you the GMP? So you're not really putting out the bid? They've already bid on it?
So the way that the GMP works is that the developer / general contractor or the prime, they are responsible for bidding out all of their sub-trades. So the district has no control in the sense that we can't dictate to them who they have to complete the scopes of work. But when they bid the job, they had a list of subcontractors that they had contacted to say increment 1, increment 2, increment 3, increment 4. These are my numbers and these are my subcontractors. We then review that and do a reconciliation on their bid and say, yes, you're within budget, or you're too far over, or ask clarifications. And once that number is accepted, we then take it to the board. The board then approves it. And then that is the number that that builder is required to live with, barring any unforeseen conditions that may occur on the site. But that's how we are able to manage and control the cost for several of these increments.
Thank you.
I hope that was helpful.
Yes, no, thank you, Kelly. So I think so. I think you completed the report. Maybe there was just the closeout section remaining, but
Let's see. Yes, there was
just
just
I'm looking at the clock. So
okay.
what
Let
are
me go
the
ahead and move
things
on.
I want
So,
to yeah.
I was going to say the last one is the Horner locker room. I believe that they are occupying that this week, and that students are already outside utilizing the play surface and the different items that we installed for them. These are some great photographs for you guys to see. So these are, I guess these buildings are about 45% complete in this photo. These are all the exterior vantage points. Thornton has 2 courtyards that are directly behind the administrative center and the principal's office. So if you guys were to come to Thornton and walk straight back, the top 2 photos will show you the main courtyard, and then there's 2 additional buildings that are directly alongside here. And this is just a guy doing some electrical work. This is another perspective, and this is just another perspective of this corner of this building here.
So can maybe we can provide this to the committee so they can look at it in more detail. But yeah, absolutely. I think we all want to see, but I want to make sure there's time to cover risks, because that was one of the goals, right? Is to understand how much risk. Actually, before we go to risk, I wanted to highlight, this is just kind of part of this. Kelly made a point to me as we were planning the agenda that part of it is creating some space for us all to learn, right? And believe it or not, this is just the Measure E projects. There are actually other projects outside of Measure E as well. So that we aren't going to talk about tonight. Projects like Rick's and Williamson.
So I'm gonna scooch through. These are some interior photos of the same buildings that you guys were looking at. Here they're installing lights, and here they're installing ductwork. And this is a science lab that's being put together. And so this is an office area that's in between the 2 science labs. And these are the epoxy countertops that were recently installed. And they actually put they polish these up and then they seal them. And that's how they get their high gloss finish on them. Then let's see, Centerville. Here's some nice photographs of Centerville. This is a perspective from inside the job site, but on the street side, you guys would see this side of the building. This is a roofing curb that's being installed for an HVAC unit that's being installed. This is an interior perspective, and you guys can see all the wires and conduits and all of the guts of the building that are going in. This is an exterior installation of insulation panels, and this is, of course, a covered walkway area. This is an interior hallway, and this is actually going to have a hard ceiling on it. And these are actual IDF rooms and technology and telephone. Well, not telephone because we're going wireless, but a lot of the technology will go into these spaces where you see this green material. And then this is the exterior of the backside of, building, I believe it's not building, I think it's building H that's in the back. And so this is going to have another finish and spray coat and more decorative items put on it. So that's Centerville. And this is your building K portable, which is going to be the new weight room. And this was actually an existing portable that we were going to reuse. But once we started doing our destructive investigation, this building had been consumed by termites and beetles. More than 70% of its structural integrity was gone. And so we were kind of forced to have to actually do a full basically a full replacement on this building. So as you guys can see, there's 3 walls that have been torn out and replaced. The entire floor, the entire roofing system, and all of the structural members that were normally a wood laminated product have been replaced with structural steel.
And did this unforeseen circumstance, how did that impact the budget?
It took a sizable amount of money of our contingency that we had set aside for this project, but we are, monitoring costs closely. And so as we've kind of gone through, we had some monies that were not spent in one of the earlier phases, and we shifted it and just sort of took care of this without having to go back and ask for an increase in the budget.
Thank you.
So,
and I think Hopkins is next.
Hopkins is next. Here's Hopkins. This is, excuse me. This is the new entry to the administrative center. So this is where you will walk in. They're currently, here it is now. You see a storefront door was put in, and this is where the community is going to come in and go to the principal's office and register their students, and big difference from what was there before. This is an interior shot of that same area. You guys can see there's lots of new light, lots of clean open walls and space. This is the reception desk. So it's a huge open area. They're going to have file cabinets and storage units that are kind of integrated within there, but they'll be seating for about 5 people along this area here. This is the interior of a classroom, and you guys can see here, they're just finishing sealing and framing off the drywall, taping and mudding that they did for that room. And this is an interior hallway, and this is all replaced wood that was dry rot and termite and beetle eaten. So, and this, I believe, is this is, so if we're walking here, this is this door here, and this direction you would walk this way, heading back through the campus to the interior courtyard. And I think if you were go to the right, you would then go towards the gymnasium and like the library.
So one of the things we wanted to talk to is kind of the risks, or be more aware of the risks. Is in our meeting last time, we were looking at that the district has $32 million in uncommitted facilities funds across all funding sources, and that there was the ask of the board and the FAC to advise on was a $20 million ask. So, and speaking for as I shared in the last meeting, I am very concerned about having enough funds to complete these projects.
Sure.
And so that was really, I wanted to make sure we had a few minutes to answer any of those questions, because we are running long.
I'm just going to go ahead and scroll all the way down to the end of this one. And this is, these are your modernization schools. And so that is the end of this presentation. And I will make sure that you guys get a copy of this. So you all have an opportunity to review it later. And, if there's more questions that pop up. But in getting back to your question, Brian, so there is 35 million in uncommitted funds. So from my perspective, uncommitted means that the board has not actually said, hey, you could pull the trigger and actually do these projects. But from a budgetary standpoint, that $35 million is already earmarked for group 2 and 3 projects that were identified in the long-range facilities master plan.
No, I'm actually referring to the presentation from last time, where took all uncommitted funds from all facilities funds, all expected Prop 51 dollars, all dollars we know about that don't have any project associated with them. If we talk about just Measure E, the uncommitted funds on Measure E, Fund 21, is just 1.2 million. But if you add up everything, if you look at everywhere that we've heard so far, right? They're not to say there aren't other opportunities. For example, if we sell the Marshall site, that'll add more funds to what we have. But based on what we have in the bank account right now, so to speak, it's $32 million to cover any facilities needs that aren't, aren't on this list that we just looked at.
Correct. But what I was stating before is that the group 2 and 3 projects that were identified have not been funded. And so if that is a direction that we are going, where we will complete those projects, then that money that is uncommitted would in actuality be the money that would be able to finish those projects. If those projects are not completed, then those uncommitted funds, based on whatever decision the board makes, would then go towards whatever those projects are that we've identified, and then would be used in that manner. I don't have an opinion either way, because the need always outweighs the amount of money that we have. So it's just a matter of what's a priority. And as you all went through a very detailed exercise last time, you all prioritized what you felt was necessary on how to spend the dollars. And so we will continue our investigation and look at, the viability of those choices and come up with some very hard, concrete numbers to know exactly what the cost will be for, say, our top 3, because I had a conversation with the superintendent today where we're seriously and very aggressively looking at opportunities to determine how we can invest money in our tax stadium. And it's not that, there's always going to be, everybody has an opinion about kind of what they believe is important or not important. But from the perspective that we were looking at it, is that, the tax stadium supports our entire district. And so if we are to continue to support the district and continue to look at the viability of the programs that are supported by that stadium, we absolutely positively have to look at what will it take for us to do something out there. And will it be a phased approach? Will it be a complete overhaul? Will we have some additional sponsorship or boosters? I mean, it's kind of like all over the place. So that's the kind of perspective that I'm having conversations with them about. And so, we always have emergencies that come up every day. Roofs are a great big issue. Fire alarms are a big issue for us. We have, transportation and safety issues that are big issues for us because, path of travel, if somebody stumbles and fall, it's a lawsuit,
So
if somebody,
let me, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm just trying to get us done by 9. So I'd say at this point, part of the purpose was to educate all of us on FAC so that we're more ready the next time the board asks to advise on a decision. And so I want to hear is there anything else, not for this meeting, but is there anything else you'd like to receive more information about that we might agendize in a future meeting? And I suppose comments on or did this accomplish it? This is I understand much better now. Thank you. That could be good feedback as well. Jennifer
So
Parker.
I think one of the things that I could probably share with you, Brian, is that for me as a facilities person, I have 3 pots of money that I can draw from. I have the Measure E Fund 21, which is the bond program. I have Fund 25, which is my capital outlay program. And that program is strictly limited to capital outlay projects. We can't take it and say, oh, Fund 25, I want to buy flowers. Well, unless it's a modernization program where you're doing landscaping and it's beautifying the building, I can't spend it. The other project budget that I have is Fund 40. And that's also another capital outlay project. So the Fund 25 is developer fees, and I believe Fund 40 is the
sale of site
fees. So those two funds are designed to supplement and support facility maintenance and growth and repairs. And there used to be, when we had the redevelopment agencies, before they were taken away, there were monies, what we call deferred maintenance funding, but that went away probably 10, 15 years ago. And that was really a substantial amount of money that we could use to actually take care of our deferred maintenance on a regular basis. But since that money is now gone, we actually have to set aside monies out of our general fund to also offset the deferred maintenance of all of our facilities. And of course, as you guys know, it's never enough, but it's just kind of where we are with all of the other districts statewide. Not
Thank you,
having-
Thank you, Kelly. And that information was presented last time as well. So go back to the information last time if you want to see more details on the different funds. Jennifer Parker.
Oh, okay. With regards to what we were reviewing the projects and stuff, and this isn't something that necessarily I'm asking to be brought back up in with this committee, but me personally, is there a way that at some point, like if I wanted to know what the budget was and the scope of work that went with that budget for the middle school sites, would I as a community member have access to that, or could I get that at some point?
Oh, absolutely. You just contact myself or either Laura and do a public information request. And a lot of this information is actually available on your website, on FUSD's website under Measure E. And so you're always more than welcome to go there and do as much research as you possibly want with regard to your specific site.
Would it list like the
It lists
budget
the
and
scope of
everything?
work, it lists the budget, it lists kind of detailed scope of like what's actually going to happen. But if there's not enough information there, you're always welcome to contact myself and we'll be happy to provide you with whatever information that you need.
Okay, thank you.
I think Robert, your question.
I think Yajing was ahead of me.
Oh, it got reversed in the order.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's my turn?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question actually is, about Kelly's presentation. It's very good. I have been looking for those kind of presentation, like what project is working on, in what phase. I did look at our Measure E tab. I could not find anything. So
you're saying about the website?
On our school district website. I could not find the report. You just had a monthly update.
No, I have not. We have not posted this report because we just presented this report to the committee tonight, but it will be posted now that it's been presented, and we'll post it as public.
Okay, so question is, you provide those kind of monthly report every month?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm gonna look for that in that section.
They should be on the CBOC's website. If they're not, please let me know.
Okay, my question actually is, you're talking about the specific, the several project, the tech stadium, et cetera, the FAC has already give their input of the priority. So those are not within the group 2 and group 3.
Correct.
So where can I find information of what project is under group 2 and group 3? That I also want to know.
That information should also be on the website. And if for some reason you can't readily find it, we'll be happy to send that to you as well.
Okay. The last question, I think this is for Brian. So you have also put a number on that tech stadium, the budget. So who did the number? It's like roughly, it's about 1.2 to 1.8 million, et cetera, et cetera. Is our staff? Oh,
it is a collective effort between our staff and vendors who would provide the services to do the specified repairs that we've identified. So we've actually, and Tom can actually speak more to this because he was heavily involved in developing that budget. But yes, we did develop it in-house and we did reach out to vendors who will provide and support us in completing the tasks that we've identified.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all my question.
Thank you. Robert.
So in tonight's presentation, there are 3 middle schools and maybe roughly 7 elementary schools, total about 10 schools. Is that all the remaining work that we're committing to for Measure E?
Let me make sure I understand your question. So what you've seen tonight in terms of what's what's in design, under construction, and getting ready to close out, that is currently what is under construction utilizing Measure E dollars.
Right. Do we have any
projects that are under construction that are not Measure E projects?
Right. But is that all we're committing to for Measure E? Are we done with Measure E after those projects are done?
No,
Or are there more?
we still have our group 2, 3, and 4 projects that
Right.
were identified that we have to address. And so
Right.
once we raise that other 126 million, we'll we'll see what we can do with that. But the goal is to of course try and address everything that we possibly can. But with the nature of the construction marketplace right now, I will just be honest that it will be highly unlikely that we will be able to accomplish what we initially set out to do.
Right.
And yeah.
So what, any other question or information you'd like back, Robert? Because I want to keep
Well,
us
I mean,
moving.
this kind of goes back to similar kind of the conversation we had last time. Is we have $1 million contingency. Is that $1 million contingency just designed to cover the projects we talked about tonight? I know there's more stuff that Measure E had promised that we're not going to fulfill, and I think we've kind of made a tentative, drew kind of a tentative line for now, saying at least these projects have to be done, and those are the ones that we've seen tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So okay.
The CBOC has a detailed report on this, and I think we should get that provided to the FAC for review as well. You can see it all. You can see everything. And certainly would welcome spending time in our next meeting going over that if the committee's interested. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Kelly. I think that this was very helpful. I'm not hearing an ask for us to spend more time doing a program review in our next meeting, but if there is other aspects of the programs you would like to agendize for review, I think that this education is very important, and it's much better for us to talk about this before the board asks us for advice, because we don't. Time is short.
Brian, just to let you know, and I know that time is short, and I apologize. We are doing the roof studies for the 10 schools that were identified, and we should have those surveys and budgets back in real time within the month. So by our next meeting, we should have something to review. And also, we are also doing a termite and beetle study, because we've come across so much dry rot and termite damage at so many of our schools that I and the design team, as well as in speaking with Superintendent Kamick, felt it necessary for us to go ahead and really do a holistic look at the district to see what the impact of that would be. And so we're going to be bringing back a report to the board with our findings once that is completed. And that will probably impact that $35 million in some way, shape, or form.
Well, knowledge is power, though, for making these tough choices.
Yeah.
Let us move on to our next item, update on the long-range facilities plan. I believe this is kind of a standing item to make sure we have time to talk to it, but I expect in the not too distant future that this will become one of our major projects for the FAC. So I don't know if there's anything you would like anything you'd like to add to that, Kelly.
No, I think that you guys have asked some very relevant questions, and if there's anything else that you all have, please feel free to email me and yourself, and we'll try and get that information back to them.
Do you have any update on the long-range facilities plan process?
Yes. So there are going to be 3 information sessions for the principals. I believe those invitations went out today. And what it is it's just kind of a refresher, 30-minute it's 15 minutes of going through a presentation and 15 minutes of Q&A that the design team is making themselves available for the principals and those who kind of forgot what they had done, say, last spring, to refresh themselves about what the process is And they have already started doing their assessment of the sites and documenting existing conditions and interviewing the principals and the principals' site committees as to kind of what their vision and their needs and, you know, current conditions of their site are. And there's going to be another opportunity, I believe it's either at the end of May or June, where they'll revisit that and just kind of do a back check to say, hey, this is what we heard when we met with you the last time. Did we capture everything that you wanted? And now we're going to go ahead and start on our long-range facility process to rank the schools and score them.
Gotcha. And one quick follow-up. When should we meet? Because before we put it on hold, the next action was to have the CBOC and FAC. I believe there were subcommittees at the time, I think, or at least the chairs, meet with you and the long-range facilities plan folks to craft how best to include CBOC and FAC. When can we do that?
I think that probably the best opportune time would be in May for us to do that. Because they will then have a sizable amount of information that they have collected, and hopefully we'll have completed several surveys for us to.
This shouldn't depend on the surveys. This is a process conversation.
I'm hoping that at this meeting, whatever we decide to do, because they will have a substantial amount of information, it would then help you all to then understand better how your role would be to be able to participate with the information that we have, versus saying, oh yeah, we want to do this, but we don't know how to do it because we don't have any information. So that's kind of their strategy, is like, let's get as much as possible, because they're looking at you as a body to help them kind of craft and consolidate the information that they do have.
Thank you. Well, then we should meet soon to see so we can agendize the process with FAC before in either our May or June meeting. Okay, Trustee Jones, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I was wondering, Kelly, does this process of looking at each school site, does it include looking at athletic fields and facilities? Because we keep hearing, okay, great.
Yes, it includes everything. Just think of, they're going to come and look at the entire district as a whole and all of the programs and all of the activities that are supported by it. So everything.
Thank you. I'm going to propose, for purposes of time, that if there's any updates you want to provide the committee, can you provide them by email?
Sure.
Kelly, anything you have we haven't already covered? We actually did cover probably most everything anyways. We have no active subcommittees. This is a standing item, so no action to take on item 10 on our agenda. And so that brings us to thoughts on future meeting topics. And I'm going to try and list the topics here that I've heard. This is the time where we'd add topics and where I assess, with your help, the topics that the majority of the committee wants to bring forward. I think the near-term things I'm aware of are the long-range facilities plan process and the roofing estimates are two things that I think are likely topics for May. And then, is there any other topics or topics on the list that people feel are more urgent? Okay. Not hearing it. One other thing I will make a note: the CBOC tonight had a really interesting presentation on Prop 51 funding. And so maybe we can get a link to that presentation and recording shared with FAC as well. Very much recommend people check that out. Very interesting. It's the type of thing I would have loved us to have, but we get the benefit of watching their presentation and saving our time on our agenda now. And obviously, if any FAC member would like to discuss what they observed, then reach out to me, and we can, and I can consider agendizing it. All right, so I'm seeing no additional topics or no additional comments around thoughts on future meeting topics. All right, well then our next meeting is May 4th at 7:30. And if there is no other business, then I will adjourn our meeting at 9:06. So close, Michelle.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great night.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Brian.